Okay, Craig, welcome to a new version of That Floats Friday. So last week's was pretty huge, and we've got a lot of new people here this week. It's really exciting.
Episode 26, David. They said we would never get past 3, and here we are at episode 26. This is
they can't
we have
stop
probably
us.
15 hours of content of you and I just being total fools and having fun with title industry and closing stuff.
And
We've
dozens
covered a
of
bunch
clicks.
of claims. We've been in this COVID thing for a month and a half, a little over a month now. Prior to that, there have been some claims and title stories, but we've adapted to our happenings. So we appreciate you all logging in and checking us out.
Yeah, what started out as a 3-hour tour, we're now stranded on a desert island altogether. So thanks all, and get your cocktails. Amy, what do you have there?
This is delicious, by the way. This is cran pineapple juice and vodka.
I remember my first drink.
I have Zima in the fridge too, if you want some.
There you go. Ooh, yes,
Wow.
Zima. Throw a watermelon Jolly Rancher in the bottom of that bad boy. Good.
Whatever happened to Bartles and James? Do they still make wine coolers?
Wow.
Oh
They
gosh,
do.
we need some of that.
I have family members who still drink that, believe it or not. Out here in Red Country. Yeah.
People have turned to White Claw now.
Craig, I'm going basic. I'm very basic today. I've got LaCroix and vodka.
Yeah, I've got. I'm addicted to this. You have this yet? Fever Tree Club Soda.
I've heard that's really good.
That's great stuff.
It's really good with Tito's, of course.
Yeah.
That's Tito's, the official vodka of That Floats.
That's right. They pay us $0.
Get sponsorship.
So our livers are even better because of it. So, well, guys, we can't just talk about cocktails, although we'd love to, but we want to talk a little content today. And with states like Georgia opening it up, Arkansas, and what was the other one that just opened up?
South Carolina.
Oklahoma. That's right.
This is trying to open.
We kind of want to talk about what's next. And, we just happen to have somebody that survived this thing on the podcast today. So, Marx, I don't want to put you on the spot, but man, can you tell us the story?
Yeah, I went to I went to an NBA, unofficial NBA snow ski event in Park City, and while I was out there, I went to go to a bar. There was about 90 of us, and I gave the doorman my driver's license. He gave it back to me, put it in my wallet. The doorman had COVID, and I guess somehow I must have touched my face from my driver's license. And that's what triggered it off. So I think about 20 of us out of about 50 or about 90 contracted from this one doorman.
How long after the engagement with the doorman did you know something was up?
It took me. So I got back Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I started feeling a little rough, and then Wednesday. I went to, And then after that, I had a bad doctor, unfortunately, that prescribed the wrong medication.
Hang on. Let's David. Would you mute everyone, please?
Yep, I'm going to mute everybody but Marx.
Yeah. So the medication that they prescribed was the COVID, and that caused double pneumonia in both lungs. And so I finally got cleared on Saturday. So I was away from my wife and kids for 40 days.
So
Wow.
let's re-go through that again. So because we had some interference there. So you had
Looking at you, Argo.
the bouncer gave you the COVID, and then how long did you say it was in days after you encountered him until you started feeling something wrong?
It was Friday. Friday is when I'm thinking it was Friday is when I interacted, because I was there almost every night to that bar as a chaperone as only I could be. And it was Tuesday is when I really started feeling the symptoms, and then Wednesday I had to go check myself in the doctor.
Were you home? Were you home from your trip then feeling it?
Yeah, right when I got back, I was back in New Orleans.
So once they diagnosed you with it, did they have an investigation to figure out if you might have encountered other people, or how did that work?
No, it was actually kind of a show unto itself. So because I didn't travel to China, South Korea, or Japan, they refused to give me a COVID test. So I had to be, so because of that, they gave me a flu test, which was negative, and then said, here, take some Tamiflu, some ibuprofen, and here's a prednisone. So once I got that, it took about 2.5 days after that, and then I was really feeling bad. I went back again to the doctor, and once I was back, they basically took another chest X-ray and said, "Go home, sleep it off." And so I was like, "All right, doesn't sound right, but all right." So I went back home, and then 2 days later, I was delirious. I couldn't stand up. And one of my friends, who's a very prominent doctor here in Louisiana, called me on the phone and said, "Look, I need you to go to this outpatient clinic now. Get in your car." So I drove. I don't know how. I really honestly don't know how I drove. So I drove there, got there. As soon as I got into the waiting room, I passed out, and they had to put me into a wheelchair. And then I went through a whole battery of tests, and they weren't going to give me the COVID test again for the third time. And I finally said, "Look, Dr. Bro said that I needed to get the COVID test." And they said, "Oh, Dr. Bro said it. All right, we'll give you the
Wow.
COVID." That was the only way I got it. And then they gave me the right medication and took me off everything else. And
Was that when you were feeling the worst, when you collapsed and you were delirious, or did you get any instant relief? I've heard some people say like it's like someone's laying on your chest when you're trying to breathe. Is that sort of how it went with you?
it was, you certainly had that part. You had a massive migraine that develops, especially when you had when your lungs were all congested from that way, because it starts clearing up into your nasal cavities. Massive muscle pain and fatigue. And I was sneezing, which they said wasn't your typical symptom, but I was sneezing through it, and that was pretty much the fun of it. I would say for about 10 days after they gave me the new medication, it was levofloxacin was the name of the medication they gave me. For about 10 days, I was completely bedridden. Actually, after that night, after the third day, they admitted me to the hospital, and then I was there for overnight, and then they sent me back home.
And then how long was it from the time where they diagnosed you until now that you've been so you're in the office or wherever you are now?
It's been 40 days. 40 days of being in quarantine.
And what are you doing now? I mean, you get to see your family, you get to go back to your somewhat normal life, and
yeah, I'm teaching my oldest. He's doing some homework right now, so I'm keeping an eye on him to make sure he's doing everything correct. I want him to be smart like you two guys.
Were you able to do work during the day? Were you in too much pain or delirious or anything that you weren't be able to connect from home during those 40 days? Or were you able to at least keep busy?
I was definitely out. In fact, I had friends that would text me, funny memes and stuff like that. I feel bad about it. I actually had to tell them to stop sending me that, because if I laughed, that actually hurt worse than than trying to breathe, because you couldn't. Just the pain from that was intolerable. So
wow.
But no work was done at all. I mean, probably within the last week is when I finally got back.
Yeah, good thing you didn't watch that floats in your time when you were bedridden. You would have been
exactly. Yeah, you might not be here.
I'll go back and be one of those 3 viewers that you guys have for the last.
Thank you.
We're up to 10.
You and Amy and Brian and Tom and TJ. So thank you.
That was awesome, Marx. We're glad you're back. It was a fascinating story, and we assume you're just cleared. Like you're cleared to get back on the playing field now, and away you go. Right?
I got the antibodies now. I got the secret sauce, so I'm good. I can go anywhere and not have to worry about it.
Aren't you one of the most hireable people or most sought after people in the world now? The people that have the antibodies that have proven they've gotten past it, and away we go.
That's what they say.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna
Mark,
have to increase my hourly fee just to
there you go.
offset that.
Well, you're guaranteed not to keel over during the trial, so unlike my my opposing counsel here. So Mark, what you're saying is this is a pretty serious deal, and even though in some areas the infection rate has not been as high, you're in a metro area, you're in New Orleans, which has been a hot spot to a certain degree. That even though we have flattened the curve in a lot of places, all that means is that we've kind of allowed the healthcare providers to not just get overwhelmed by the first wave.
Yeah.
And that going back to normal isn't exactly just opening everything right back up. It's we have to take certain precautions.
Yeah, I think that there's a balance there that's important to think about. One is I think that initially they were very worried about all the hospitals being completely overrun with people on ventilators and completely jamming up the whole 9 yards. Yeah. The other part is you have the economy that you have to open up, because if you don't open up the economy, the suicide rate's going to far surpass the COVID rate.
Yes.
I do think with COVID, I think people are a lot more aware now of it. I think that if they start feeling symptoms, they're going to go to the doctor immediately. And the doctors are now a lot more prepared than they were when I went in. I was probably one of the first here in Louisiana to be diagnosed. And those new sorts of techniques and medications that they've come out with seem to knock it out. The people that you're typically seeing that are getting sick or ending up on ventilators, they're extremely infirm, typically a lot older, or they're folks that have they've waited too long. They thought that this was just the flu; they could get over it.
Yep.
And by the time that they realized it, this thing moves pretty quick. By the time they realized it was too late, and 24 hours later they're on a ventilator. So I've had a number of friends that have been in the ventilators, on ventilators. All of them have now been discharged. One of them had lymphoma cancer he was going through. Another one had diabetes and heart conditions. So it's getting better and across the country. I do think that a lot of parts of the United States can open up. There's no reason to have parts of Wyoming and Kansas closed when you have these urban areas in New York where it's still going up. And
sure.
Has the bouncer, not to make light of it, but has the bouncer that you initially gotten COVID from, has he at least sent you like a gift card or anything, or has he
like a free cover to the club the next time?
Do you get to go back and just punch him in the head, or is it?
I mean, I'm not going to blame him. I would say I blame more the doctor that I went to that misprescribed, that gave me the wrong medication.
Yeah.
Had it not been for that, this would have been in and out, and I would have been fine. I think probably in the New Orleans area, I would be stunned if at least 50% of the population hasn't already had it.
Yeah, they were saying, especially like New York and I think Santa Clara, California, they did some studies of folks, and it could be 30% plus easily have had it and some of them didn't even know it.
Which is good. It's just recycling through the whole society, and ultimately everybody's going to get this. It's just a matter of when, and hopefully we don't have a bad second wave coming up in the next fall. Exactly.
So, Matt McBride, I know you kind of straddle a couple state borders with different, with different open dates. So how are you guys handling this going forward in Missouri and Kansas with potentially different timetables?
Well, we're waiting for, words from the cities. We're more interested in what Kansas City, the core four, what they call it, the four counties, and then
sure.
St. Louis Metro, what they're going to do. So both of those cities were on stay-home orders till May 15th, regardless of what the states do.
Yep.
So we're kind of waiting for that. We're researching the 3-phase opening that the CDC's been talking about. We've got a start of our guidelines and what we think we're going to do. So of our 190 employees, 150 of them are working from home right now. We're only doing curbside closings at our 25 offices. Nobody's allowed in the buildings except our few employees that are actually here. And we're going to continue that for at least for sure through phase 1 of the reopening, possibly even through phase 2. It just really depends on, what happens over the next few weeks, and we'll kind of go from there. But I've got several employees begging to come back to work. They don't like working from home. But for now, we're making them stay there.
Gotcha.
I think this work from home thing has been interesting. We've had a lot of meetings internally at our company today, because we're just going to assume let's just assume this thing's cured over the weekend. I mean, just for fun, and we're going to have a lot of our staff that going to ask to make this work at home thing more permanent.
Yeah.
Because so far it's working.
Yeah.
I think we get more. I said this last week. I think at this point, I think we're getting more out of the people that are working from home than when they were in the office, because I think they have something to prove. Like, hey, if I'm going to be from home, unsupervised in my sweatpants, I better start producing. I think they're overproducing now. Yeah. But what I guess I'm kind of curious, and we're looking internally at creating a work from home plan to just to make it happen. I mean, it's working. So and then there's the impact on commercial rents.
That's going to be huge.
That's exactly where I was going. We're in the middle of negotiating space in Texas, and the pro forma that I got was based on 6 months ago. So it's going to be a big change going forward.
Absolutely.
But I listened to the Commercial Real Estate Association in Wisconsin had a thing yesterday, and they had a presentation by the guys that do the office rents. And they said, we're going to have even more of a demand for more space because everyone has to sit further away. We used to talk about density inside of our commercial leases, and now that's off the table.
Yeah.
Now we're creating more workspaces, so people are going to need more office space. So I've heard both sides of it. It'll be interesting how this shakes out.
Individual offices versus the, not a cubicle farm, but an open workspace, et cetera.
But the old open workspace where 10 people logged into this big wide open table is often, I mean, you can't do that anymore, right? Everyone's got to be further away.
When we go to London, because there's just spaces at a premium there, you go into the reinsurance brokers' offices, and there's just a long table that's 30 feet long with computers on either side, and people just lined up. And there's no offices except for like the managing partners, and that's about it. So,
and that's gone. Don't you think that's the thing of the past?
They're going to have to figure out a way to change that. So, Brian, you guys, you're in a state that's going to be one of the first to open up. What? How are you guys preparing for this? I'll unmute you. Go ahead.
We're going to try to keep. I think, like was mentioned before, we're going to try to keep a lot of our procedures in place. Still, a lot of people working from home. But we're expecting the Texas governor to announce some new things on Monday that'll start opening up some restaurants and some other things. So we'll just see how it goes.
Excellent. Now, Maria, you're in a ton of states, so you're having to juggle, multiple offices. And I know with Title Alliance, you guys have, it's kind of centralized but not centralized. What are you doing for all this?
Well, it's been a challenge. Our backyard is Pennsylvania, and there's certainly a lot of restrictions. And our CEO, Jim Campbell, I motioned for him to come in to see Marx's newly svelte figure. We have been, the four of us, the four executives in the company have been reporting to the office. Everybody else, we've executed our business contingency plan and have been working from home, but ours is exclusively a joint venture. And our front line in Pennsylvania have been doing contact-free, touch-free closings wherever possible. And you may have seen Megan Hernandez did a really nice write-up when Jim Campbell did his first closing ever of a COVID survivor. We thought he might be the safest guy in the room. It's been challenging to execute, but being in Pennsylvania, I'm a big believer of you play how you practice, and we had the incredible opportunity to sort of perfect the execution of our business contingency plan in the toughest state as we roll out to the 10 other states in which we're active across 3 time zones. It's a very different environment in Arizona and Idaho. And our folks are sort of in our corporate team of the 50 or so staff that are normally here in our headquarters in Media, Pennsylvania. It's just the 4 of us coming to work every day, and then they go home to their families and I go to the hotel room. And I'm one of 2 people in a 200-room hotel for the 7th week now. But I finally rented an apartment here and stopped commuting from my home in DC. I'm the only idiot going into a residential rent in Media, Pennsylvania. That was going to happen anyway. So we're actually the lucky ones. We get to socialize with each other. The team building has been an enormous positive that's coming out of this as the 4 of us show up every day and execute. Every state has its nuances, whether it's Ohio or Florida. Florida's been a particular challenge. Virginia, and then in the West, they're just several days behind what's happening. And with us being so close to Philadelphia and the hotspot, we're under enormous duress. And the governor of Pennsylvania, as you may know, and certainly Cornelia has seen my frenzied emails and my calls to Steve and Diane and the new guy, Chris. I'm like, Chris, you're the new guy. Please help. Governor Wolf is completely inconsistent with every other governor in terms of, yes, you're an essential business. No, you're not an essential business. And navigating that has been challenging. So we are continuing to do business as we believe all of our competitors are. And our pipeline is still super robust. And we feel as if we have to help the homeowners complete the transactions they want to complete. So we have not had a single transaction fail due to C-19 situations as of this moment.
That you guys could control at least.
Correct.
Yeah, like I know some of our agents in Florida. I had a call from one the other day that they lost one because the owner owned a restaurant and he walked away from $10,000 earnest money because he knew he wasn't going to be able to afford that house going forward. So he's like, I got to cancel. So you mentioned Florida. What are the issues down there that you're running into? Because I know Craig's down there as well and some others. We'd love some insight on what kind of headwinds you might be hitting down there.
Well, the municipalities is where we're finding the 4 municipalities in southern Florida that Bertha had a particular interpretation of what is essential and what is not essential and what can happen and what can't happen.
Yep.
So again, we were looking for consistency in the interpretation of what is essential business, what is, as they've called it in Pennsylvania, life-sustaining, and what trumps what wins, and how should that be interpreted? And again, the murmuring, the questions that come from the realtors, because again, our model is strictly joint venture. So the realtors present sort of half a story. What do you mean you can't remote online notarize a document when a particular lender takes it? And it's that conversation happens at least 120 times a day. So in Florida, we have the particular challenges where the municipalities are inconsistent with the governor's edict. At least that's what I'm seeing, Craig. I don't know if you're seeing something different.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, bad timing for us. We're in a bunch of beach communities. We have 6 offices in Florida, and they're all on the beach, and the beaches are essentially closed, and there are no tourists, and all the big rentals are empty. And what we need people like Don Anderson and Craig Haskins from the cold Midwest to be sitting on a beach on vacation right now in Destin or St. Augustine or Sanibel or Pensacola going, this is great. We should have a house here. but we're all stuck in our houses in the Midwest or New York in the cold and DC and everywhere. So right now, luckily for us in the Panhandle, our offices are spread across all these military towns, and that's been busy. But for all the good stuff, the big, multi-million-dollar houses that, the wealthy guy from New York coming down to buy a second house, those are all kind of dead in the water right now, which hurts. But they'll be open up soon, and hopefully we can get back on track. Dawn, what are you thinking? You unmuted.
I'm with you. Let's go to Florida.
There you go. So, Dawn, Minnesota, what's the plan up there?
Well, we're in a wait and see as well. Our governor is kind of holding some of that close to the vest. He's very transparent in a lot of things. They just closed the schools. Just yesterday, they announced that the schools will not be reopening this year.
We're in the same boat. Yeah.
Right.
And they canceled summer. We're not going to have summer school either, so we're like,
Well, that's because you're teaching your children so well at home, they won't need it, right?
Yes, they're feral at this point. No.
Right. That's our philosophy. So, he's talked about the 3-step approach as well, and hasn't really announced exactly how we're going to open up the state. But it's, he tends to announce those things only a few days ahead of time, which is, you kind of see it coming with what his comments are, but you really don't know exactly what he's going to do.
Sure. And speaking of comments or things coming out, Cornelia and Maria, we're past the witching hour of 5:00 Eastern, which is usually when the governor of Pennsylvania decides to shut down the entire state and say, Cornelia, tell everybody, just so they know, what our 5:00 on Friday have been like the last 2 weeks involving Pennsylvania on that, because it's been, the Alta board emails and everything going on has just been absolute insanity.
Yeah, Maria, you alluded to it, but it really has been something that it just completely, it seems like they're not very, how do you say, just inconsistent is the best way to put it, because the first one that came out was not an official, it was just basically a leaked memo. Then the second one came out and it seemed more official, but there's been no enforcement from what I hear. And like you said, you're still able to do business, and they haven't really, stepped in to stop that. But Elizabeth Blosser has been, just burning up the phones, trying to figure it out. And, we've got good connections with the Pennsylvania realtors and the mortgage bankers there. So they've been all in very close contact to just make sure that we can continue, doing business. And it's just, I'm surprised that we haven't seen something today. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really interesting to see what all the changes on this. And I know Pennsylvania just had the emergency RON legislation that went through. So, and I'm sure Maria and Alta and the rest kind of had a little a hand in that, I'm sure.
Ron versus Rin.
Exactly.
Who you got?
Yeah, it's been pretty disappointing just in terms of the PLTA. This is where the strength of Alta is just really critical. The unified voice and so much more sophisticated at the national level. And I just really am super grateful for Alta's leadership and participation with not only with the National Association of Realtors helping the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors, and like you said, MBA, and just across the trade groups. That unity, I lived in DC for how many years? You've never seen that kind of unity across trade groups. It's been remarkable, very impressive, humbling, but only marginally effective when it comes to Friday at 5:00. And like you said, it's the witching hour when Governor Wolf goes off the rail.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And we were talking about a lot of this stuff when it comes to like Ron and digital closings. Jamie, I know you were kind of at the forefront of this. I know Craig, you were too. Where do you guys see this as far as more funding for county recorders and for e-recordings, lenders with digital mortgages? Do you see this really pushing that forward, or are we going to do what we normally do, is forget about this in 3 months and not move everything forward? Jamie, what do you think?
I've learned a lot about the Southern way of doing politics. I've
Bless
learned
your heart.
that bless your heart, exactly. The banks are pissed. The banks are really pissed down here, and I sit on the Mortgage Bankers Association of the Carolinas, and on the board of directors, and which is a blessing and a curse because they love having my mouth, and it keeps me up. You know, here's what it comes down to. I'm going to do everything I can that we don't forget about this, because every single one of us on this phone, on this call, is sending people into harm's way every single day. And before I go to bed at night, I pray to God that I have not killed somebody by sending them to a closing or by closing their loan. And I hope that the legislators are ready to reckon with that in their next set of elections. I hope that the secretaries of state are ready to reckon with that, because the banks are pissed because we're putting their clients in harm's way. I'm pissed because I'm putting my people in harm's way. And I happen, believe it or not, I am a jerk, but I happen to care about my folks. And I'm set to have a set of phone calls next week, and I've been doing some studying on the RON laws, because we've got emergency video notarization that within 2 days. I worked with Secretary of State. We had it done within 2 days, and our governor chickened out because he was afraid that the other party that leads the House and the Senate in North Carolina would file a lawsuit against him. So we're still sending people out. I've lost 20% of my signing panel that do 50% of my work.
Wow.
Thank God nobody's gotten sick, but I think that what we are going to see is a lot of banks start pushing really hard. I can tell you that in my state, it's going to get ugly next week.
Yeah.
General Assembly goes back into session next week, and it's going to be a very interesting week, because instead of having an executive order, we had to write a bill.
Yep.
And our bill not only has emergency video notarization, but a relaxation of the Good Fund Settlement Act.
Oh boy.
And that's moving heaven and earth. But I don't know. It's Southern politics is very interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see how I fare with it. Because,
exactly,
like I said, sometimes I just don't have a good filter.
Jamie, I think you see that kind of everywhere. I don't think it's just Southern at this point, and it's not just the Ron stuff. I mean, it's e-recording. Cornelia, Alta deals with this. What's the percentage of counties nationally that still don't have e-recording?
Right. So interestingly enough, we have 80. I think it's 84 counties out of our 100 have e-recording. But what they're doing is, for instance, Union County, which is the bordering county of Mecklenburg, they refuse to put deeds of trust online. Well, they opened it up, and now deeds of trust are online. So we are seeing some movement there, believe it or not.
Okay.
But it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah. Cornelia, I mean, what's the percentage? Do you know off the top of your head? Not to put you on the spot or anything, but ballpark?
I don't know it off the top of my head. It is a surprisingly high percentage.
Yeah, I want to say something like 40%.
That's what I was going to say. Was
of counties in the U.S. do not have e-recording.
And the majority of those are probably more rural, but still.
Boom. Amy, thank you.
Oh, 40%. There you go.
Amy, yeah, there you go.
Well done, Amy.
Amy's so smart. You can unmute Amy if you want to chit-chat about that. So
I actually just completed a Ron white paper. It's actually a digital closings white paper, so it's like the history and evolution of digital closings with an emphasis on Ron and an examination of how COVID has kind of spurred all of this 20-year journey along. So yeah, that was one of the things that I had to find out.
Gotcha.
About 40.
Okay. Well, and it's kind of interesting too to see. I remember everything that was, that has been predicted to put us out of business as, the independent title agent or or everybody. So Craig, has Ron put you out of business yet?
Who are you asking, Dave?
Craig Haskins. Has Ron put you out of business yet?
No.
Okay. Did blockchain?
Not yet.
Nope. Okay. MERS. Did MERS put you out of business?
No.
No. Okay. So,
but I
survived MERS, blockchain, and now Ron.
Yeah, I mean, the need for a local source for title and closing still persists, and maybe that changes in the future. But for now, that's kind of what we all hang our hat on.
And I remember the first time at least in my home state of Missouri, when the Ron bill came through, you had the independent agents out there with pitchforks and torches. Matt, you know that. I mean, people were saying, "Oh no, this is going to be, the companies in the big cities or somebody from Chicago is going to be doing a closing in Worth County, Missouri." And no, they're not, because one, Worth County has more cows than people and does not do e-recording. And yet some of the rural folks have figured out, wait a minute, I can do a Ron closing for one of my rural customers, and they don't have to drive the 30 miles from the other side of the county to me to come do a closing. It's a tool. It's not a replacement for the agent. And I think that we're all going to be seeing more of this going forward, as far as more vendors, more expansion of this. And it's something we have to embrace, because we're only going to see an expansion of digital. And Marx, you probably know this with the law. I mean, we're going to be entering into some really interesting times with bankruptcy trustees, emergency declarations from secretaries of states and governors. We're going to have some retroactive Ron laws when they do go into effect that automatically blesses everything that was done during these times. Because if I'm a bankruptcy trustee and there's questions on some of these, if whether or not the governor has the power in many states to even enact an emergency Ron bill. And I'm a bankruptcy trustee. I've got somebody with a Ron or a REN loan, and I'm going to say, wait a minute, that was not valid under this state. And you're going to start having secretaries of states being expert witnesses or being witnesses on some of these cases. How's that going to work?
I mean, that's crazy. You think you're saying that a bankruptcy trustee is going to go to a federal courthouse and say that some title agent who's got a recording of the borrower signing their document is going to, and the feds are going to roll over and go, "You're right, that's not proper, throw the mortgage out."
Yes.
Okay.
TJ, Marks.
I would say under the reps and warrants for these lenders, they have a responsibility to make sure that these things are done properly. And if they're not done properly, if you're relying strictly on the governor's signature that he has no authority on, this executive order, then you definitely have a problem there going downstream.
So Craig, from Jamie's and I's perspective, in the Eastern District of North Carolina, there was a trustee that was throwing out mortgages when the note and mortgage were not of even date because they were self-referential.
Yeah, no, I get all that. I'm just saying now what are you going to say? The whole point of the notary is, did these two individuals sign it? They're on video. So you're going to go in and say a crisis the world's never seen before. You got a video of Mr. and Mrs. signing a mortgage, and the trustee is going to get it thrown out. Just because that wasn't them?
They're going to say that the note is valid as to the individual borrower, but the notarial act was not proper. Therefore, the mortgage was not properly recordable, and therefore it's an unsecured claim. That's what's going to happen.
I'm playing devil's advocate. I can't wait to see it. I think we need to get ahead of it as an industry. It wasn't notarized properly, but the whole point of the notary is, did X and Y sign it? Here's a high-def video of them signing it. Really?
But under the laws of that state, is that a valid notarized signature?
I hear you. I hear you.
And bankruptcy trustees, they love nothing more than getting a piece of property that was secured, unsecured, and because they get paid for that.
They get paid for that. Yeah.
So Craig. Back
don't argue with Craig. I'm just saying it'll be fun to watch.
Yes,
I know.
I'm not a bankruptcy trustee.
Hold on. So in 2008, when we started our firm, and we were losing our ass, the only business I could bring in was consumer-facing loss mitigation, and I made sport out of getting deeds of trust and promissory notes set aside until my REO clients threatened to pull all the REO business I ever had. And
I hear you.
And so what we did is I have a list, and on that list is there a note? Is there a security instrument? Are the right people on it? And is it properly notarized? And if it's not properly notarized, it's a problem. And Marx, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe UDAP could be used?
I mean, I think it's going to, I mean, possibly. I think the bigger issue is going to be on the mortgage lenders and mortgage brokers with the reps and warrants with their investors. I think that's going to be a real.
That's what I'm talking about. You know, between the first and secondary market is, and I use the term UDAP, but unfair and deceptive trade practices between the mortgage broker and the secondary market. Because that's exactly why we don't have an emergency video notarization in North Carolina, is because Roy Cooper doesn't want that.
And I'm not suggesting you guys are wrong at all. I just think that all the other defects in mortgages and deeds of trust from 08 and 09 and all those years is slightly different than the fact that what's the evidence that it wasn't properly notarized? Fine, great, amazing. But here's a video of the borrower signing it that's been preserved in tamper-proof evidence. So I'm just saying it's going to be entertaining to watch.
Yes, I think that on the other part, that you have people that are still, you know, some knuckleheads out there think that Facebook Live is a good tool to have these things done, and some other not. And so I mean, I know that Jamie's a big fan of Avon, because I can see he's used a lot of makeup today. And if you get the emails, he sends the Avon emails out all the time. So I had to put him on kind of a mute section.
I know that, you know, I'm surprised his old pink Cadillac, you know, that he had for Mary Kay.
But those are the ones
out in the driveway.
Are the ones that aren't the, you know, the notarized and the Pavassos of the world. It's going to be these offshoots that have no security. There's no ability to go back to confirm or authenticate that these people were actually there.
I've been saying that. I've been saying the same thing. I 3 or 4 weeks ago on this very That Floats podcast, I said that we've seen title agents authenticating documents via FaceTime and Zoom, and some underwriters were fine with that. And everyone on this podcast is like, oh, that's crazy. And now we've kind of transitioned into this RIN thing. Well, it's not technically Ron, but if we can bend the blur the vid, and I think it's nuts. But if it's temporary and it's okay, it gets us over the hump. It gets all these borrowers homes, and all right, maybe I'm not going to like it. Maybe I understand that it's a temporary thing, but now you're saying, well, this is nuts because it doesn't comply, and we're going to have a hell of a lot of time with bankruptcy trustees getting these things thrown out. So I'm just saying, this is, you know, grab your popcorn and see what happens after all these loans default or not. So who knows?
Maria just got a big win, it looks like, by the way.
And then Cornelia was saying Fannie and Freddie. What were you saying there?
Fannie and Freddie have now said, they'll accept a certain amount of these in certain situations. So that kind of begs the question of who did they ask and what have they looked at to make it that they feel that it's comfortable.
Yeah.
I think in lieu of that, everybody pulled out of the cash out refinance market now. So once Freddie and Fannie did that, everybody's like, all right, we're out of cash out refis because we don't want any liability going downstream either.
Yep. So we got Mr. Bill Birding on here. Bill, you've been strangely quiet, out there in California. What's happening out there?
How about the NFL draft, Bill?
Yeah. Bill? Oh, hold on. Let me unmute Bill. Bill, can you hear us?
There you go.
There it
I
is.
got you now. Well, we're very happy we got Jerry Jeudy. RTR is going to be phenomenal for my Broncos. So I'm very excited. Sutton on one side, Jeudy on the other. Watch out.
Hey, you
So
know
I'm
what?
more
You're playing for
interested in
second
that.
for the AFC West, so that's a big weapon you need out there.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
You and the Raiders in the pillow fight. So there you go.
Actually, the one thing I've been dealing with a lot is what Craig's been talking about, and we've really been preparing that we think that a wave of litigation is coming our way very quickly. We all some of the things we're being asked to do, even though they're approved by Fannie and Freddie, in litigation. And I just remember the MERS litigation. At one point, we had 500 cases in our country where we were named as a defendant in MERS litigation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a much more tenable lawsuit than the MERS litigation, which I thought was really weak. But we're able to get people out of deeds of trust and mortgages. I strongly see this is. I don't see where the governor's orders are have any merit to them whatsoever. I don't think they have the right to do it. We're not relying on them. We're using Ron and Rin in some varying places, but it is a montage across the states. We do some things in Pennsylvania that we don't do in Arizona, that we do in Washington, that we don't do in California. We do things differently in Northern California and Southern California. So it's just every day is just a mishmash, and I am convinced this is going down a litigation hole. And while Craig may enjoy the popcorn and the ride, I think this is going to be a nightmare the longer it lasts, because I get criticized by my staff across the country saying that I believe this litigation is coming down the pike, and they kind of just don't believe me. And I asked the one question: if you were a lawyer, which side would you rather take? The foreclosed out homeowner, or would you rather take the bank? I'd rather take the foreclosed out homeowner. I'd rather take the consumer every single solitary day. And bad facts make bad law, and that genuinely concerns me that we're going to come out of this and we're going to walk into a myriad of litigation. And it is probably the thing that is worrying me and the thing that keeps me up at night more than anything else, because we are doing what our lenders are telling us to do, and we will be named as defendants, and I mean, I can't even thousands we lost in MERS cases in 2008, 2009, and we won every single one of them. And it's probably into the millions, not even hundreds of thousands, that we paid to defend. And so, and that's one thing that's what keeps me up at night.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Amen. Even if you win, you lose, right?
Yeah. TJ, I was just going to throw it to you as a recovering Bank of America lawyer.
Yeah.
Give us the lender perspective on this.
It's really interesting. The biggest thing I think that, and Jamie and Marx mentioned it, is the reps and warrants from the GSEs and the buyback. The mismatch in the industry has always been between what's covered under title and then the mark-to-market losses you have on buybacks and penalties. So you might have title covering litigation for whatever authority challenges there is to the underlying security instrument, but you don't have any recovery for the carrying costs, the buybacks, the penalties, the interest, the having to have insurance on a property, the things around having to buy back a loan. And so you have a really big balancing act that we're doing on the lending world of continuing to have business flow and knowing that every dollar you put out there, some portion of that's going to come back from a litigation expense standpoint. So I see that happening, and we talk very frequently in the Incenter family with Blackstone and our parent company, who has commercial and residential holdings, exposure to a bunch of lenders. And besides the liquidity concerns, the concern is the MSR market. The concern is forbearance. The next shoe to fall is going to be these reps and warrants and secondary market repurchases and bankruptcy, particularly where the rosiest of projections has unemployment at 11% in January of 2021. So it's a shoe waiting to drop, but everyone's so scrambling for air right now that they're not there yet with that risk. That's tomorrow's risk, not today's risk. But it keeps me up at night like Bill.
Yeah. And Craig's going to just watch it all smiling and laughing.
I mean, I'm just throwing some gasoline on the fire here to get you lawyers all riled up. Some of us lay people like to watch you guys get all excited.
It's going to be, it's not necessarily going to fall back on agents, right? One thing that we've asked for in the agency world has been for lenders who are pushing RON or RIN or some alternative closing process to put that specifically in their closing instructions. So us and drive that to us so that we feel like we're being given direction by the lender such that there's not necessarily an E&O claim. It doesn't help Bill, it doesn't help David, others in the underwriting world deal with those claims down the line, but it at least protects the agent in the short term from those types of issues. Hey, we're following directions. Underwriter, maybe you say risk created assumed by the insured, therefore not my problem, right? Maybe that's the route that we go. But it still doesn't stop the lending world from having massive losses. FHFA has made it very clear they want to put a gun to the head of consumers and mortgage servicers and mortgage lenders with the lack of flexibility with credit facilities for servicers, the 5% mark-to-market penalty for buying loans and forbearance. They're not doing the industry any favors right now. So I think that's where if Mark Calabria continues in that role past this year, then you're looking at potentially that kind of fight come second or third quarter of next year.
Just to set the record clear, I'm a Ron guy. I'm a by the book Ron guy. Our company helped write the rules in our state. Did the first one in commercial, did the first one residential, did the first all that. So I'm the guy that's like sitting down watching the popcorn, eat with the popcorn, seeing what happens to all those people that have taken shortcuts in this process. So it's interesting to see. By the way, we're getting close to our hour.
Yep.
And I just wanted to toss one more thing out there for my agent pals. When we have our Alta agent meetings, I've reminded people in the past that the way to kind of some of the economic indicators that we like to look at are the actions of our underwriters. And with quarterly earnings coming out and some of the earnings calls yesterday, it's be very interesting to read the publicly traded underwriters' earnings calls to kind of get an idea of what's happening in the underwriter world. And they've all been fascinating. And, a couple of them say that they think in the last week or two, we've bounced along the bottom, that we've bottomed out and that we're on the uprise. A couple of them disagree and think we're still in for a hurting, down 40% over the year. All of them, I think, agree that commercial market completely uncertain. So I think it's one thing that I like to look at. I religiously have alerts for underwriter earnings calls. I think there's a lot that an agent can learn from reading those, because let's face it, the underwriters have economists and all sorts of folks on staff that can analyze these a little bit better than agents in our market. So those are out there. It's fun to read. Some of them make you feel better because maybe they're experiencing worse hardships than your company is. Some might provide some insight on what you might want to do in the next weeks or two. So
Yep.
David, that's all I have. You have anything else, bud?
Yeah. So if you guys make sure you check out That Floats at That Floats on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Now, Craig, these won't be posted on Instagram, right? Because of it, they're just harder to deal with.
Well, Instagram is owned by Facebook, and once we keep getting our cloud up on Facebook, then Instagram will let us post them because they're an hour long. So that's the problem.
Okay.
I post it takes about 6-7 hours, and then they say we're rejecting it. So yeah, I would just focus on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube right now.
And check Twitter and Facebook for next week's link. You can, so we have these sent out where you just register for it. It's a lot easier than just doing when I send out direct invites, because you can then send that link to anybody, and feel free to spread this around to title, real estate mortgage folks that you think would benefit from this. But and if you have any topics, feel free to let us know. We're always looking for good content. And I think next week we want to kind of talk more, Craig's talked about this a little bit, what the market's going to look like, either regionally, nationally, et cetera. I'd love to kind of, we could play forecasters next week and kind of discuss where we think it's going to go and all that. Craig, no?
I just don't know how you can do it anymore. I don't even know, like David, I called you in the first couple of days of this back in March. And on the way home from work, you said, what are you thinking of? And I said, I'm just happy we made it to 5 o'clock. Our goal every day is let's get to 5 o'clock with no major crisis. Company's still operating. We made all our expense payments. Staff's happy.
Survive in advance.
Coming back tomorrow morning. I mean, I don't know how far out you can forecast.
Yep.
So, we'll see. Who knows what next Friday's That Float's going to be? We didn't even know what today's That Floats was going to be until Wednesday or so. So.
Yep.
We'll roll with it.
We just know that Marx is ahead of the game because he got this early, so that now when all the other lawyers are sick in 3 months, he'll be getting all the litigation. So, yeah. But no, guys, we appreciate this and hope you enjoy. And we'll see you guys next Friday. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Right on.
All right. Thanks
Glad
all.
you well, Mark.
Yes. Thank you.
Let the rhythm